So I think when we think about integrated care, we can think about it in two tranches, I guess. The first is kind of integrating what we currently do, which I might describe as defragmenting care. So if you think at the moment, an individual patient receives care probably from a number of different organisations. So if we can link up in a process, care and data way what we currently do in terms of those different organisations, we could do two things. We can ensure that information is available at the point of care from all points of care delivery. Very important for all sorts of reasons. But secondly, we can start to manage the care across those organisations, which allows us to map interdependency, allows us to understand the complex interplay between all those sections. So that's kind of integrated care as is today. The slight nuance on this, and I'm on a stage, so I get to invent these things. So my version of integrated care also includes knowledge. So integrating our evidence base and our current knowledge base, research base with clinical practice. So for me, you know, one of the kind of the routes to unexplained variation in care, one of the routes to clinical risk and cost is this large amount of variation we see in care. So a key bit of integration for me in what is in essence a knowledge industry, because that's what healthcare is integration for all the players around an individual patient and the knowledge that underpins their activities. And that's kind of where we are today. There's a broader question around the future of integration, which we kind of alluded to in that talk, which is starting to think about much broader data sets, thinking about the Internet of Things, thinking about wearables, novel data sources from diagnostics that might be consumer-driven, genomics, information around our environment, leisure, transport, etc., and starting to integrate not only a kind of illness view of the world, but a wellness view of the world. So there's kind of slightly long answer. So there's a kind of there's an integration of kind of where we are today, and there's a kind of an as-is integration, and there's a kind of to-be integration, a model of linking a much more complex world around an individual.
Sure, and that's the ultimate in holistic care, because it takes care of everything that we possibly imagine.
Indeed.
So integrated care is great, and we often hear this term integrated care, and we all want to kind of celebrate it, implement it, etc. But it's pretty difficult, right? We all have this great vision. So why is it so difficult, Mark? Why can't we seem to nail this one? It seems we all want it, it's there.
So there's a lot of reasons, but fundamentally, you can't go from paper to AI. So part of the challenge we have is the environment we have. So I think it's easy to approach it as it's APIs, it's integration, it's systems to point, but what is the point if you're not going to do anything with it? So I think integration is not just the initial point of work, which is the technical side, it's understanding where you're trying to go with it though. Because I think people integrate systems for the sake of integration, maybe to reduce storage, to say I've done it, I've consolidated my information, but actually before they approach it, they need to understand what they're trying to do with it.
Yeah, sure.
So I think the challenge, back to what I tried to say earlier, is the challenge is where do you start? And I think, you know, Mark and I speak a lot about, you know, he says himself, rhetoric to reality, right? There's a lot of discussion around this, but the reality is, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to solve? People want use cases. It's a great get out of jail free card now, but people say, oh, show me a use case. Yeah, but is it relevant to you though? I mean, the use case has to be something that's impactful. It can't just be tick in the box. So I think the challenge with integration is not, or integrated care, is not that we don't want to do it and can do it, it's that people will not come up with the use case that truly will benefit them. So they ask us to come up with the use cases. We have great discussions. Mark and I have had some great meetings in HIMSS in January this year, or February this year. People were asking us, what is population health? This is an organization that should understand what population health is. But again, I think we have to be very transparent about what we're capable of doing, because you know we'll get into the futures of the art of the possible otherwise, and then people won't do anything. They'll just go, oh, it's too scary. it's going to need another budget, it's going to need loads of people involved, and we just have to get down to the basics of what are we trying to do.
Sure. So I'm getting the impression that, of course, it's asking the right questions. So you're not asking them to just say what's the solution straight away, is what's the right question, what are we trying to deliver that's manageable and that's also impactful. That's, I think, a key message that I'm getting through from both your talks from this morning, which I think is really important for the audience to understand as well. AI won't, our solutions, or AI, whatever it is, won't give the answer that you're not looking for. Okay, that's the first thing. I guess the next question is about that journey. So as we take that journey, we think about integrated care and the solutions of tech, whatever is going to implement that change, is what does it look like when we get there? How do we know it's there, we've created something? And how do we know whether we've been successful or not? So, Mark, if you take that question about the end result and how we kind of figure that one out.
So I'm tempted to give you a pretty trite answer, actually, and say we know when we've arrived when patients tell us that we've arrived. So this is about perception. When I'm a patient and I'm receiving care and it feels integrated to me, and I use the word feel intentionally because there's an awful lot of emotional in healthcare. When I feel held by a joined up system, when I feel that the information I say to someone is shared in a way that I have transparency and I have trust with, and when I feel that I have sufficient trust in the system that's wrapped around me, that it's using the best evidence and the best knowledge to make the best decisions every time for me, treating me as an equal part of that team and listening to my voice as I contribute, that feels like integration to me. And when people are saying that to us, do you know what? We've arrived. We're not there yet, but we need to get it there. There's a few things fall out of that, I guess, and part of this is kind of understanding what's happening now from an integrated perspective. Understanding kind of what should be happening now from a data and evidence and a research perspective, and from what Mark was saying earlier on, understand what's likely to happen. So thinking about planning for the future and thinking about this dreadful word, predictive analytics, which I can't even say, but there's this concept of us starting to predict the future, not only for individuals or groups of individuals, cohorts, but actually thinking about the future of our systems and some of the changes that might be applied. So I think that's how we'll know when we've got there, when people are starting to say those kind of stories back to us.
Sure. It's almost like the UI UX conversation. The UX is the answer. It's working. We're happy. It's all seamless. UI is the back end.
Exactly.
Right. Mark, tell us about IBM Watson Health.
Yeah.
And what are you doing in this space? We all like to know about your kind of vision now as a company, because you've kind of not changed direction, but you've got traction in different ways, right?
Right.
Quite recently, in fact. So tell us more about your vision around IBM Watson Health.
Well,
Okay.
We're all called Mark for a start.
Yeah, so you have to change your name
So
on the
I
way
can't
in.
apply for a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's Mark 1, Mark 2, I mean, yeah. So, okay, so you're absolutely right. I think, again, I spoke earlier about people tried to productize AI. And I think there is an element of danger with that, because you go down a certain direction where you, in effect, are providing point solutions, and the industry is not really ready for a point solution, because they are way behind with regards to data consolidation. And I think what we've done, so I will go to Watson Health in a second, is in essence we've got 6 businesses inside the business. So we have a government business, an imaging business, an oncology business, which is genomics, inside of that as well. Provider business, life sciences, and we have a consumer health business as well. So we have these very different businesses, but fundamentally inside all of them is the patient or the citizen in some cases. So in the government business specifically, we're focused on care in the community. Okay, Watson Care Managers are a good example, where we're providing citizens access to services that meet their needs personally. So who they are, what they do. They could be a Down syndrome person that accesses the swimming pool services in a community because they need access, but also they want to go when it's not that busy. So it personalizes where they should go and why they should go there. So that's the government type, community citizen space. But in general, we're focused on the big issues, right? We're focused on oncology, genomics, imaging. We're focused heavily on life sciences as well. And I think the overall strategy comes back to the single point of we're trying to provide insights, but actionable insights. So I think everyone can provide insights to data. There's algorithms out there where you can say, well, here's the data, here's the result, but it's actionable insights is the key. So I think really what we're focusing on as Watson is, and I spoke to a lot of people outside, is we need to get away from thinking AI is a product and look at it as an outcome. Okay, look at it as you have to go through stages, you have to consolidate your data first, you have to make it data, so if it's paper, you've got to digitize. And then you once you've got the data, then you need to come up with, back to the earlier point, use cases and actionable insights. Not just insights, it's not just about analytics, it's about actionable insights, something that will impact. So yeah, as a business in Europe, we have a substantial coverage of Europe. We cover and obviously Middle East and Africa as well. And we've got, we're very rich, and again, this is not just to big up the other Mark 2, I'm going to be Mark 1, okay? But we've got clinicians, we've got people that understand health, and we have a lot of them. You know, I think as an organisation, we've made the largest investment in clinical people to make sure that our products are researched correctly. You know, they are peer reviewed and they are challenged, because I think today, again, we're trying to win over an audience when we shouldn't have to win over an audience, because AI has become very robotic, very futuristic, and actually the what we're trying to do here is solve really, really key problems. So.
Well, it sounds great, and it sounds as though you've kind of taken a more of a mature approach and more sophisticated now, understanding social requirements, social re-engineering almost, that's kind of in the back end of enabling AI to be introduced at scale. And we've made mistakes, all of us, about at pace trying to put things in, and the patients aren't ready, and they're not quite understanding what the problems might be. Questions on the floor, please raise your hands and the microphone will come to you. This is a great opportunity to really ask all the questions you ever want to ask about AI and deep machine learning, and also about this whole care system approach. There's a hand up here, start here, thank you. Just say your name and then ask the question, that'd be great, thank you. Just right there, there you go.
Hi, my name is Dr. Aswini. I met you earlier. I work at King's College London. The question to you is that to take the AI into the clinical field, in our audit, many of the people are still hesitant. There are ethical issues, because who is the ultimately responsible, where the buck stops, and who is, they call is a respondent superior, means who is answerable in the court of the law. Okay. As you know, with the self-driving car, Uber self-driving car, ultimately there are 16 issues which can be held as culprit, starting from sensor to why the driver slept, or why he was playing the Amazon app, or etc., etc. In the clinical issue, because every coding error is a human error, can the developer be responsible for a clinical mistake causing clinical injury?
Okay.
So look, I mean,
you can take it, but I'll take it as well.
Yeah, so, no, I mean, so that's a brilliant question, and I think a lot of the issues around ethics, quite rightly, get somewhat distracted by the kind of end point of autonomous clinical practice. But do you know what? We've got a lot of AI capability and a lot of AI assets to kind of draw on before we get to total autonomous clinical action. So at the moment this is around augmentation in terms of what we're doing in Watson. We feel very strongly that this is about us creating systems that support clinicians, that augment the capability of clinicians, and provide them with the tools using AI that frankly enable them to be more effective and more human at the point of care, by taking some of the drudgery and the memory work out of processing large bodies of knowledge. The emphasis that we've got is, we call it leading with science. And frankly, it's about treating AI in the same way as you would treat any other clinical intervention that you introduce, a drug or anything else. It has ethical implications, it has medical legal implications, it has an evidential research implications, and it has cost impact and clinical, and we do evaluation in that way. So a lot of the work that we're doing at the moment is with scholarly publishing, with peer-reviewed journals, to start generating the evidence base, not only of the components of the stuff that we're working on, but how we introduce it into the workflow, and then ultimately what impacts it will have. So to two parts to your question. So in terms of the first part, in terms of our emphasis around our approach, I think that's how we see this. In terms of the ethics, we pride ourselves in IBM in kind of leading with ethics. We've just been voted as one of the most ethical companies in the world because of the work that we've done leading on AI across business specifically, generally, but across healthcare. We are very proud to have signed up to the recent ethical guidelines and work that's happening across the EU. I am not going to use the word Brexit.
You just did it.
Yeah, oops. So we're very proud to be a part of that, and are very strongly supportive of those principles. For us, it comes down to the ethics around the use of data, the ethics around us not owning data but letting our customers own the paper, and us having a responsibility for the mature and safe stewardship of data. A very clear emphasis around transparency, so allowing people to see in a human reading, understandable way what's going on, to challenge the issues around black box and the inherent biases that can be introduced into AI systems. And thirdly, this issue at this stage around augmentation, so respecting the stuff that, although computers can do things that are really clever, do you know what? Human beings do really clever stuff as well. Sure. And if it comes down to empathy, if it comes down to judgment, communication, emotional connections, we're a long way before computers can do that better than we can do it. Mark,
sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, I want to answer this in a very practical way, because audit is very retrospective, right? I mean, in its nature. And what you need to do, because this is not just a question to IBM, it's a question to an industry, right? Is we spend a lot of time in some products going through medical device regulations. I mean, healthcare is massively regulated. So a number of our products are medical devices, both FDA and CE marked, and they have an intended use. I mean, they go through the process of an intended use, and in most cases, people will use them as their intended use. But you go outside of that as a healthcare organization, you're going outside the medical device regulations, right? So I think it's very important for you, if it's something that is truly diagnostic that you're implementing into your organization, challenge the medical device regulations. Challenge the fact that does this need to be classified as a medical device? Because you have that safety net, right? I mean, that's the beauty of regulation, is that there's ways you can productize and commercialize. And I think part of your challenge right now, I think, is the maturity of the market and the research projects that are going on in lots of organizations that aren't really regulated because they're still trying to, open the envelope, if you want to say. And I think you just have to be honest about, okay, so if we didn't have this, what would we do in clinical practice? Because what tends to happen when tech comes is people go from here to here, when in fact the problem's over here. So they're trying to solve, this has gone very loud, sorry. They're trying to solve too many problems when in fact they're over here as an organization. So be realistic about what you're trying to achieve as opposed to go, the tech failed. So I think medical devices is one way to look at it. Look, if it's a medical device, you have an intended use. From an audit point of view, we've, again, back to Shafi's earlier question around kind of peeling back where we were 4 or 5 years ago to where we are now, we spend a lot of time in pre-work around concordance. So we do a lot of studies up front. Oncology is a great example, where we come into an organization and we say, actually, before we make this commercial, let's look at your data, let's run it through the system, let's look at its concordance. So concordance being, how does the system fare in comparison to the clinician? And then, are you comfortable with that percentage? And if you are, then we go forward. If you're not, no problem, thank you very much, we part ways. So I think there's an element of, challenge companies to upfront run your data through their system and say, what is the concordance? Is it good? Is it bad? Because ultimately it's your decision, right? If you buy technology, you've taken the ownership at that point. The ethics, I think, is a big rock, but actually I think we're making it something it isn't, because it's not about the ethics. It's about your due diligence in the process of acquiring technology. So,
Thank you, and please feel free to raise your hand for further questions. I'd like to ask a question to the audience, actually. We had a little conference back in November, the Giant Conference, and in that we talked about data, because it came up so often in the conversations and AI and stuff. We asked the audience, in fact, I'm going to ask this audience, right, about data sharing. We produced a data donor card, okay, rather than a kidney donor card. We asked the audience, how many of you would be happy to be a data donor? So those that are happy to be a data donor, can you stand up for me? They'd be happy to share your data.
I haven't done that yet.
Okay, and sit down. And those that don't want to share data, stand up.
Interesting.
And the others were kind of not sure, right? You want some more information. It's interesting, when I did that in London, the entire audience was happy to share the data. It was really interesting.
I really want to ask people why, though.
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Because I'm in the middle.
Yeah, you're in the middle.
As someone who basically lives in data, I'm still in the middle.
You're in the middle. That's really fascinating, isn't it? With your insight.
Yeah.
Yes?
So it would be interesting to ask the question around who would like to control their data.
Okay.
Because I think if we said to people, would you be happy to share your data if you had complete transparency about how it was being used and you had control over who, when, where, and that. And I think we would get a very different answer there. So for me, this is around respecting the individuals, personal autonomy to kind of make decisions around their data footprint, and we kind of stopped treating citizens as kind of data cows to be milked, as they cope with their lives, which is clearly something that's inappropriate. And if we want to be serious about partnership, and we want to be serious about citizens and patients having a legitimate voice, both in terms of what they say, but also in terms of the data that they generate, we need to treat people with respect. So part of the ethics for me around AI is actually the ethics around consent and the ethics around confidentiality and security.
Sure. The same people that stood up earlier about saying you're happy to give your data, the other question people ask is about, okay, some people say yes. If I then said to you, well, what if we sold that data? How many of you would still stand up?
No.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
People don't mind sharing data. It's when it becomes, as you said.
But also, I think we're in a different world now, right? I mean, unfortunately for me, never went on Facebook, and now I'm too late to do it because it's going to look stupid.
It's never too late, Mark.
It's going to be too late because I can't catch up now. I have no ability to. Where do I go, right, to get into that world of Facebook? But I think people are very quick to Instagram accounts that basically show how amazing they are. Never the bad stuff, always the good stuff, right? And they're the people sometimes that don't want to share the data because, back to your point, the issue is we've been burnt as humans around data. And we need to remember that we are a data map, okay? So we are a genomic data map as a person. And we're individuals. And I think there is an element of sharing of data is too wide right now as a concept. And I think if we can come down to, back to Mark's point earlier, if you said to me, okay, I need to know everybody under 30 years of age because I want to map their cardiac data to benefit pediatrics from a cardiac point of view, they'd do it like that. Because there's an actionable insight. There's a reason to do it. And I think, this is going very weird. So I think it's back to what are we going to do with it? It really is. And I think you ask the same question, if those people that didn't want to share data were benefiting people, they'd do it.
Yeah, I think
so let me tell you a story about that. So when I was in the UK, I was involved in some research that was delivered by the Wellcome Trust around people's attitude to data sharing when they had received a serious diagnosis. And the needle changes. So if you've received a serious diagnosis and you are asked if you'd be happy to share your data to contribute to research, to improve ultimately the treatment of everyone who shares your diagnosis, but also potentially yourself, it is up in the 90% of people who would contribute at that point. So the questions are different depending on how personal it is, whether it's me or my family or my nearest and dearest, and the risk-benefit equation starts to shift depending on how close it to us. The challenge that we have, and this is interesting, is that, although, people who receive a serious diagnosis, the vast majority of them are happy to share data and take part in research. Actually, it's a very small percentage of people that actually get that opportunity, because the great corpus of trials that are out there, all the complex inclusion, exclusion criteria that describe a trial, how is me a clinician know if Mark comes to see me with a diagnosis that Mark's criteria fits one of those trials? It's an almost impossible task for a human being to do. But actually, what a brilliant use case for machine learning. Yeah. Machine learning can read trials, it can read unstructured data, use natural language processing, work out what the inclusion, exclusion criteria are, contextualize it in the data of an individual patient, and then augment the conversation between a clinician and a patient to say, these are 3 trials that you might want to think about, that you might want to take part in. Not to make this too salesy, we introduced such a relatively simple system in the Mayo Clinic. They increased their uptake of trials adoption in the Mayo Clinic for breast cancer by 84%, just by doing that.
That's amazing.
So these are people that want to take part in trials, but just using machine learning as a way of navigating what's out there augments what clinicians are able to do.
Fantastic. So I'm getting a message is that, first of all, you ask the right question, it augments our practice, and basically it's providing interface. We're not quite ready for autonomous thinking, don't think about it. It's augmenting our practice currently. Yeah. It's going to help things like clinical trials. Immediately today, we're seeing huge benefits of uptake, which is great. The data-only question is around about the narrative, getting it right, so that people do understand what it means, understand the problems we come with and we face. Last words to you, Mark.
Okay.
About IBM Watson Health. How do you want us to help you as a community to support you?
So, I've said this throughout, even pre-IBM. I just think it's important to be very transparent about your problems. I think we as people and as organizations like to hide stuff, right? If they have a serious issue in surgery or in radiology, and don't be sort of reticent when we come in with, oh my God, there's another tech company coming in here. This is just about money. I think you have to help us as an organization, it's be more transparent about the issues that you have in organizations and actually want to fix them as worrying about the tech and the cost and all these issues, because our goal is to actually, there is no new money. We get it, okay? No one's got any money. Done, got that. But our goal is to drive efficiencies out of the organization to unlock some of the costs, to make it neutral in effect, right? So again, invite people in, get educated, be transparent. That's the way it would help us, not just IBM, but the industry as a whole, is just to be more engaging with regards to the issues that you currently have.
Sure. Thank you. So that was a fantastic panel discussion. Great thanks to Mark Davies and Mark O'Herlihy, or Mark 1, Mark 2, I can call you now.
Mark 1, Mark 2,
we're kind of close enough, I think, now.
You go this way, that's fine.
After listening to music last night, I feel closer to you now. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shafi.